And we got Kentucky's Kevin McGuffey on the line. Last word on college football. And unfortunately for the Cats, they did play a game at home this past Saturday. And one of those upsets that we were just talking about that many people were surprised about, Kentucky pushing a 10-point favored status, and they got blitzkrieged in the second half, Kevin.
Yeah, there's there's no good way to sugarcoat it. Saturday was just pretty much a disaster, and I don't think a whole lot of people saw it coming. I didn't. I thought Kentucky, excuse me, I thought Kentucky would probably win and actually cover the spread. You and I talked like a couple weeks ago about how Kentucky, especially in the non-conference games, never covers the spread. But I was going to come out of the gate 2 weeks in a row say they covered it, but it just to use a term that Coach Stoops uses is a total systems failure, and that's basically like the entire. They couldn't do anything. Run the ball. They ran the ball well. Probably should have ran the ball a little bit more. There was one stretch in the game where they ran 18 straight times, and running between the tackles, they were actually getting some good yardage, making some strides, but then ended up having to settle for a couple field goals. And then as soon as they went back to trying to pass, Kentucky's offensive line had no answer for South Carolina's defensive front, led by the I'll say it, remarkable freshman Dylan Stewart, and they had no answer. Vandegrift was, running for his life. If anybody watched that game on Saturday, and then they brought in, he banged up his shoulder a little bit during the Southern Miss game, and so after he threw that pick six, they took him out, put Gavin Wimsatt in. He ran the ball pretty well, got like 45 yards, but again threw an interception down and close to the goal line, and yeah, that was it. So it's one of those, bury it, bury the game, bury the shovel, and oh yay, now we got Georgia coming in this weekend.
Yeah. Well, do we have any idea if Brock Vandegrift's going to be okay for this Saturday?
Yeah, I think he's fine. I mean, I think he could have, if it wasn't 31-6, and there was probably no hope of winning. I think if it was a close game, he would have stayed in. And he wants to play this game because that's one of the storylines going into this game. You got Brock Vandegrift and you've got Jamin Dumas-Johnson, two guys who transferred from Georgia last year to Kentucky, playing against their old school. That's one of the that's one of the storylines heading into this game on Saturday night at 7:30 on ABC. So I think he'll play. One thing to note, when they released the depth chart yesterday, Chip Trainin was not listed at running back. They honestly had hoped he was going to be back for South Carolina, but obviously didn't play. Then the thought was for Georgia, but he's not listed. Was not listed on the depth chart. It was a Demi, and who's done, by the way, Demi Sumo-Karmbe has done a really, really good job the last 2 weeks heading that rushing attack. And then the true freshman Jason Patterson that you and I have talked about as well. But Chip was not on the list on the depth chart for this week. So it's unlikely, I guess, now that we have that those injury reports that they have to do like they do, in the NFL, I guess we'll know for sure on Wednesday. I think that's the day when you so if he's
for the SEC.
Yeah, for the SEC. So we'll know for sure tomorrow, but I would say he's probably not going to play again. But anyway, let's get ready for Georgia. Hey, stranger things have happened. Northern Illinois went in and beat Notre Dame. Any given Saturday, anything can happen, right? Let's try to stay positive.
Let's stay positive. Let's stay positive about the Big Blue Wall. So we talked about this during the offseason a number of times about the offensive line. That was the pride and joy of this Kentucky program, one of the aspects, along with the defense when they had their best seasons. And then it wasn't up to standard the last few years, but there was expected to be a strong offensive front, and they did not show up on Saturday.
Now, that's about the best way. The best way you could put it. There's just a dismal showing. They did have for parts of the game. Gerald Mincey and Jagger Burton, two of the starters, were out for periods of time during the game, but still, no matter who they brought in, they just had no answer. It's been very, very disappointing, that aspect of the game, Saturday, because as I said, we going into it, you can say that for many, say this for any game, of course, but whoever wins that battle up front is likely going to take the game. And like I said, South Carolina just absolutely dominated, and everybody's kind of wondering what's going on here. They brought in these guys from the transfer portal, got all these starters back. Something, at least for Saturday anyway, something just did not click. And I guess you give the credit to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks for their game plan. I just don't think, Stoops said after the game, said our game plan wasn't what it should have been, all of that. So, but yeah, the Big Blue Wall been a little shaky so far in 2024, and us, the Big Blue Nation, can only hope that the ship rights itself pretty quickly, or we're going to be, we could be looking at a season where that bowl streak gets snapped. I mean, I still have like our latest bowl projections probably will be coming out shortly after we get done here. I do still have Kentucky. I know, shocking. Still have Kentucky in a bowl game, so got them playing in the Liberty Bowl against Central Florida. But right now, you got to look at that path to 6 wins. You would think, you beat Ohio University, beat Murray State. You would hope that you'd beat Vanderbilt. They have Vanderbilt and Auburn at home, so that's 5. And then you've got Florida, who they've had great success with recently, and you've got Louisville. So, there's and as Stoops mentioned in his press conference yesterday, the joys of the new SEC schedule, the new top 25 zone. I think Kentucky plays 4 of the top 6 teams. So. So they got Georgia at home, but then they go to Ole Miss, they go to Texas, Tennessee. So yeah, could be some rough sledding. But like I said, get through Saturday and see what happens the rest of the season.
Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football. Check out Kevin's bowl predictions coming out later this week and everything that's provided there at the last word on college football, one of our favorite stops. So, Kevin, yeah, you started to play the game that I was going to lead us to, because Kentucky's unfortunately one of those programs where you kind of chart out where's the path to, let's say, it looks like 8-4, because these are the wins, these are the losses, these are the 50-50s. And South Carolina was supposed to be one of those wins. And now we'll play one of the other early season college football games that everyone plays. Oh, wow, that happened. Does that mean Kentucky's no good, or does that mean South Carolina's a lot better than we thought? Oh, well, South Carolina only beat Old Dominion by 4 points. That doesn't look good, but it's only 2 games for everyone at this point. So we're still playing that wait and see who's really good, or who played a team on an off week, or what's the story.
Right. And that's the thing about it. As you said, it's just week 2. Everyone was very excited about, the first week win over Southern Mississippi. The game, it was only a little over 2 quarters. So you didn't have a huge sample size to go with from that game. But, Kentucky did a lot of good things in that game. Now, who knows? Southern Miss has not been that good the last few years. But then, as you said, South Carolina barely beat Old Dominion, who was picked, I think, near the bottom in their conference. And just for whatever reason, Shane Beamer just seems to have Kentucky's number right now. So it's 3, that whole UK South Carolina series has been one of streaks, because, South Carolina won like 13 of 14 from 2000 to 2013 or something like that. And then Kentucky won 7 of 8, and now South Carolina's won 3 in a row. So, but go back to your point, that's one of those games before the season that Kentucky looks at the schedule and says that that's a game that we should win and that we have to win. South Carolina looks at that game and says this is a game that we have to win and a game that we think we can win. And we still don't know for sure, but if you remember back to last year, they were talking about when the permanent scheduling happens that it's likely that Kentucky and South Carolina end up as permanent rivals. So from the Kentucky standpoint, they need to get back on the smiling side of the scoreboard in this series because, as you said, now that road to 6 wins got a whole lot tougher by losing that game on Saturday.
I'll tell you what I expect to see. I expect to see South Carolina. So this is another measuring stick. They're playing LSU. Is LSU great? Probably not. But are they really good? Yes. They lost to USC in the last play of the game. Now people have seemed to, okay, they lost, dismiss them. But their season's not dead. LSU's still a good team. And again, they took that game down to the final play.
Right.
So, how does South Carolina measure up against LSU? Another good data point. The Kentucky, Georgia, Kentucky's had really good teams and lost to Georgia by 4 touchdowns. So,
Right.
I don't know if that's going to be a great barometer, but if Kentucky's able to make it a game, then I'm going to have a little bit more faith in what's going on in Lexington. Yeah. And I'm going to keep going back to Mark Stoops' comments at SEC Media Days that they're proud of what they've accomplished in lifting this program from one of the worst programs really in the Power 5 to a consistent 7-5, 8-4, even better a couple times, but that now is the time to push through that. And that's not a great indicator, of course, on Saturday.
Right. And another point that something you and I talked about has been Kentucky's the last couple years, the inability to win home games, especially in the league. You think 2022, 2023, they went 1-3 in home games against the SEC. And I think I was trying to find the stat before I got on here. I think in their last 10, I read this somewhere, in the last 10 SEC home games, Kentucky's 2-8, which equals a mark from 2000, starting at the end of 2012 through 2015, which would have been at the end of Joker Phillips's tenure at Kentucky and the beginning of Stoops' era, when that program, as you said, was probably at about its lowest point that it's been in who knows how long. So, something, just figuring out why can't they win these home games? It's so, it's been so frustrating. And then another comment, the tying it into Georgia after the Georgia game last year, if you remember, Stoops on his radio show said, so a caller called in and said, why can't we be more competitive? And he said something along the lines, well, fans need to pony up. The pony up, I think, was his comment, with NIL money and, donate. And to their credit, the Big Blue Nation has done just that. But since that game, Kentucky, I think, is 3-6 overall, with two of those losses coming to South Carolina. The loss in the bowl game to Clemson, where they had a big lead and lost it, and I think includes a loss to Missouri, where they also got out to a big lead and then lost that game. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's, we're not saying that. I'm not saying there's heat on Stoops, but if we get to the end of the season and they end up 4-8, then we'll see what happens. But I think his buyout's like $44 million. So, Kentucky just went through this with John Calipari. So, of course, he ended up just going to Arkansas. But yeah, going back to the Georgia game, I just want to. I hate to say this, but I just want to see them compete. I want to see them get out there, hustle, not play dumb football, which they played. They made a lot of not smart plays on Saturday, I thought. Get out there, make it competitive. I don't think, there's a less than 1% chance that Kentucky's going to win this game. But I want to see, I want to see some positives, even, not to sound like a coach. I want to see some positives in what's probably going to be a loss, and that things that you can take to move forward for the rest of the season. Because then you have Ohio U next week, and then you go to Ole Miss the week after that. So that'll be fun. But Kentucky always plays Ole Miss well, and their usual games are always close. But unfortunately, everything it seemed to everything seemed to tip in the Rebels' favor the last few years. But those games have always been really good and always really tight and gone down to the wire. So, but you just want to have a puncher's chance, right?
Well, there's not necessarily anything wrong, or I should say incorrect, with what Mark Stoops had to say. That's the way the game's played now with the NIL. However, we see this in politics all the time. There are things that are true, but then maybe they should be stated a certain way. And with Mark Stoops, probably needs to tread lightly on give, pony up.
Right.
Pony up, I don't think probably rubs a lot of people the right way.
Right.
And then on top of that, if you're going to pony up, and by all indications, as you said, Kentucky has done well in NIL, then you need to deliver.
Right.
So,
absolutely. Like I said, I kind of miss the days of when Kentucky, the way the schedule was, and Kentucky would start 4-0, 5-1 every year, and then we get that great sense of confidence, and then you hit the gauntlet of the SEC. So I can't see Florida offering Stoops, but who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? That, like I said, that's a game. Kentucky's won 3 out of 4 against Florida, and that's a game they have. We'll see what happens when we get there. But yeah, there it is. Like I said, $9 million. He signed that new deal a few years ago, I think through like 2030 or something like that. So, and I said, I think the buyout is like $44 million. So, but like I said, we're not going to get into all that right now. Just get through, like I said, get through this game Saturday, see what happens. And the biggest thing is you don't want any injuries, to help, to hurt, and then just go on with the rest of the season. And we'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm still confident that they at least get to 6 wins in a bowl game. That's obviously not what the BBN was hoping for. We got to that point with the program where we were just happy to get to 6 wins in a bowl game. But as you said, the last few years, that should be that's the ceiling, or excuse me, the floor. We should be getting to that. Expect 8 wins, 7 to 8 wins every year, and then you get the occasional, which has happened twice now, where you get the 10-win season. So, like I said, it's a tough task on Saturday, but we'll see. I'll throw out. You can throw out all the cliches you want. They have, it's why they play the game. That's why, anything can happen. So just look at Northern Illinois, right?
There it is. Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football. Kevin, we appreciate you stopping by as always, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me. Always enjoy it. And then feel free anytime you need me, just let me know.